everyone. My name is Jafar Hasnan. I'm a presenter at TRT World, and it's such an honor for me to be here with all of you here. And certainly today we are going to discuss a topic of discussion that concerns all of us, migration. According to the United Nations, 3.6% of the world's population are migrants. Migrants represent 3.6% of the total population in the world, totaling more than 280 million people, while the refugee population is more than 36 million across the world. And the displacement driven by wars, climate catastrophes, economic crises, famines, they have proven that no corner of the globe is immune to the challenges of migration. And I think the evidence is pretty much visible in what's happening in Gaza, for example, what has been happening in Syria and with the Ukrainian migration crisis. And according to experts, what we need at this point is a different approach, because the traditional approach to tackling the problem of migration has proven to be ineffective. What we need is a more comprehensive, compassionate, and cooperative approach to tackle this problem, and that's exactly what we are going to discuss in our panel today. And to navigate through these challenges and complexities, it's my honor to introduce my distinguished panelists. To my left is Mr. Nasser Kemal, Secretary General, Union for the Mediterranean, UFM. Thank you very much for being with us. And then I have Mr. Michael Spindelegger, Director General, International Center for Migration Policy Development. I also have the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Colombia, Francisco Jose Coy. I have Irina Wojtkova Solerano, Deputy Director General, International Organization for Migration. And last but not the least, Raouf Mazou, Assistant High Commissioner for Operations, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. It's such an honor for us to have you here at Antalya Diplomacy Forum. Now, it's, like I said, a topic of discussion that concerns all of us. Mr. Spindelegger, I'd like to begin with you. Could you just give us some insights on where exactly do we stand in terms of the international community when it comes to the challenge of migration? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities out there?
Thank you very much. I hope it's working, yes. Thank you very much for this question, ladies and gentlemen. If I may start, I would say, first of all, you have mentioned this number. So we have more than 3.6% of world's population in migration. So this is the highest number we ever have seen in the past. So increasing numbers is one of the trends in migration we can see. Also, the numbers of refugees are increasing, as well as of internally displaced persons. So this is really a warning signal that this is an issue where we have to look at more in detail. The second trend of what we can see is also conflicts are rising up. So you have mentioned, of course, the war in Ukraine, as well as what we see now in Gaza, but there are others, like the Syrian war, that we should not forget. We have conflicts in Africa, Sudan, for instance. So, of course, a lot of conflicts are rising up. So this always creates waves of refugees, and so we have to look that this will not be an issue that goes away, but that we have to deal with within the next years. And the third trend that I can see is more and more, as we have so many elections during this year as never before, that we have to see that there are conflicts within countries about migration issues, conflicts within parties in migration issues. So it's not easy to find one line how you can deal with. So it is very separated. If you have a look to Europe, discussions are going on just to have more tough rules concerning migrants, concerning refugees. So this is an issue we also have to deal with. And I think what we can conclude out of that is we have to look forward what kind of new ideas we have to manage that in a better way. But maybe we will come back to that later on.
Absolutely, we will. And the whole idea is to come up with ideas that can tackle this problem, because like I said, we need a different approach, a cooperative one, a compassionate one, and that's exactly what we're going to discuss today. Now, Mr. Kemal, let me come to you. When I think about migration, refugees, one region that I cannot ignore is the region of Mediterranean. That's one of the main routes for refugees, migrants to enter Europe. Could you give us some insight into what exactly is going on in the Mediterranean right now, and how do you believe the problem of migrant flow can be solved? Okay, can we have the technical team here, because...
I think it will.
Okay, all good, thank you.
It's one mic at a time.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me first, and pleasure to be here in Antalya Diplomacy Forum. Well, the Euro-Mediterranean region is a hot spot when it comes to migration for so many reasons. One are indigenous, related to the demographic trends. We have a galloping demography on the southern Mediterranean region, and on the north, you have a declining demography. I mean, 60% of the population of the southern Mediterranean region are under the age of 30, while 65% of the population of Europe is over the age of 30. So you have an imbalance in terms of the workforce, in terms of the market needs, in terms of jobs. Then you have the second overriding cause of this, causing this hotspot is the geopolitical situation. I mean, post-Arab Spring, Syria, Yemen, and today Palestine, all of those have created. Then you have a third reason, which is climate change. We are adjacent to one of the most affected regions by climate change, which is the region of the Sahel and Sahara in Africa. And also the region itself is experiencing the adverse impact of climate change. We're warming 20% faster than the rest of the world. We are a region that is very water poor. 250 million persons around the Mediterranean are defined as water poor by UN standards. So all of those factors are creating, of course, huge pressure in terms of migration. So we see countries like Lebanon, where 1 in 8 inhabitant of Lebanon is a refugee or a migrant. Another example is Jordan, 1 in 13. Turkey has 10 million. Egypt has just received a couple of million of Sudanese refugees in the last 7 months. That gives you an overview of how intense and how difficult the issue is. So and it's going to exasperate in the next 10 to 20 years if we don't adopt the right policy and the right approach, because we know for a fact that all those factors will increase the flow of migrants to the region. If you want me to elaborate on solution, I can, or would you like me to wait for the
We'll get to the solution, but one thing that I wonder is, you mentioned climate change, and certainly climate change is a serious issue, and it is real, it is impacting us in more dangerous ways than ever before, but I do wonder, is climate change the biggest factor behind migration?
Yes and no, because, I mean, research are showing that 84 of migrants in our Euro-Mediterranean region coming from sub-Saharan Africa or from within the region, 84% come from countries who are impacted by climate change. The percentage was 60% in 2010, it is 84% today. So if you see the increase, there must be a very direct link between deteriorating climate condition. Even Syria, the civil war in Syria, has been attributed by some research to the agricultural sector in Syria being hugely impacted during the last 20 years by climate change. So yes, climate change is one of the drivers and one of the most important drivers. But definitely let's not forget the demographic imbalance that exists between a rich north and a less affluent southern Mediterranean region.
All right, fascinating insights. Now, Minister, let me come to you. So what we are discussing right now is, of course, the problem facing this particular region, especially the European region, but let's go to your country, Colombia. Where do you think the migration problem stands in that part of the world?
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Well, for the Latin American region, we are experiencing right now in the continent a big movement of people going from the south to the north, as usual, but we are confronting new figures, new situations that we haven't seen before. My country, since 2018, for the first time in its history, received about 3 million people coming from our neighboring country due to the political situation and economic situation there. And probably as a result of the pandemic, some of the movement stopped for a while, and now we're living new influx of people moving that way. So my country has never been a receiving country of migration. This time we are having a lot of people coming into our country. We received 3 million people. Over 4 million people, more or less, walked through our country going south. And then in a moment after in the last 2 years, 2020, 21, we saw that some of these people start moving north, entering in this flow of people and going to the United States. Where we're watching now is probably part of a global network of organizations promoting the kind of irregular migration. We're receiving now people not only from Latin America, but also a lot of African, Chinese, and Asian people going through the Darien, in the border between Panama and Colombia. Last year, we had more than 500,000 people going through Darien in a very dangerous crossing, trying to get to the United States. So this is part of a global phenomenon we're watching. We have to see the situation in that way, with a global perspective. I have to work all together in a way to manage this, working it that way so we can find solutions to there, or a way to address that phenomenon. So what we're watching in Colombia, in our region, is part of a global phenomenon we have to address all together.
Let me add one more question here. So, in order for this crisis to be addressed, one thing that many experts believe is to engage countries of origin more effectively. Let me pick your brain on this. How do you think that can happen? How do you think countries of origin can be engaged in a more cooperative and efficient manner?
Yes, that's an obvious solution. We have to work on the causes of migration, working on the points of origin of migration. That's one point. The other thing, that there are two successful migration crises the last 10 years. One is probably the people coming out of Ukraine due to the war. Europeans are receiving them very well. And the other one, you have to say this way, here, what we did in Colombia. Those 3 million people coming out from Venezuela are regularized in Colombia. They are getting the formal economy, so we're receiving them, and we are trying for them to contribute to our development. That's a way of handle, rapidly accepting them and putting in the formal economy, giving them identification, access to banking, etc., etc. But the other part is more difficult to handle, is the people going through the country, when they're staying in Colombia, they're willing to go to other countries in the north. That's a different situation, but in any way, we have to work all together in the way to handle those flows.
All right. Fascinating insights. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Mazu, let me come to you. Certainly, the organization that you work for is at the forefront in tackling this problem, and with the number of refugees reaching an unprecedented level, your organization's work has become even more challenging. I wonder what kind of strategies or perhaps new measures your organization is implementing for the protection of migrant rights and to assist them.
No, you're right. The numbers are indeed very, very worrying. 117 million people displaced, mostly internally displaced, it's important to underline that, but also refugees, people fleeing their country for the reasons that we all know, conflicts, but there was also a reference made to climate change earlier, direct consequence of climate change, indirect consequence of climate change, but of course situations of persecution. So we see these numbers rising constantly, and we see a lot of pressure on countries of asylum. And I would use the point that was made by the minister from Colombia. What we're seeing, and the best responses today, is inclusion, is to make sure that documentation is given to people, that they are regularized in the country where they are, and that they can be part of the economy of the country where they are, that they can contribute to the economy rather than to be provided with humanitarian assistance for a long period of time. What we're seeing is that it is more and more difficult to mobilize humanitarian assistance as we see more and more crisis, but the good thing there is that we see that the development organizations, international financial organizations are more and more willing to look at issues of forced displacement. And a lot of what was done in Colombia, for instance, was done as a result of the support received from international financial institutions. So economic integration, socio-economic integration, until people can go back to their places of origin, is probably the most effective response to the crisis that we are witnessing now.
Okay, just want to pick up on one thing. You mentioned inclusivity, and I want to pick up on one thing that Mr. Spindelegger said when he was responding to my question. He spoke about politics, elections across the world, and undoubtedly one of the biggest factors that is acting as a stumbling block when it comes to inclusivity in a society are political barriers. So tell me, as the United Nations, how do you think that particular barrier can be removed?
What is important to underline is the generosity that we see around the world. Whether it is the Ukraine crisis more recently, where you had millions of people crossing into Poland, crossing into Romania, Moldova, they were received, they were provided with assistance, with protection. If you look at the situation in Sudan right now, hundreds of thousands of people moving into Chad, moving into South Sudan, Central African Republic, they are received by population. It's difficult, but they are received. So we do hear this negative political impact, but the important thing is to underline that the generosity of people who receive people who are moving from neighboring countries, because that's the vast majority of refugee situations, people moving to a country that is close to theirs, that is still there. Explaining better the circumstances in which people are, the reasons why people leave, is, I think, something that also helps us respond to that wave of negativity that you just made reference to.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Mazu. Now, Ms. Arena, let me come to you. I'm slowly trying to bring the discussion towards finding a solution. Can you share insights with us and on what are the best practices when it comes to integrating migrants, refugees into societies? If you were advising a government right now, what would you tell them?
Thank you very much. IOM is dealing over 70 years with this issue, and governments have not solved the problem yet. So it is actually not a problem. It is migration has been around since the human being can walk. And this is what we have to understand, that it is a very natural process that people seek opportunities or that they flee distress. And in today's world, which is very much globally interconnected, it is very much a mix of all of this. And Turkey is a case of point. And when we look at the migration flows, refugee flows to Turkey, through Turkey, so one can see that it's a mix of situations. Therefore, one needs to have a mix of responses. There is not one response. One has to look at which migrants are desirable to stay, which migrants are also would like to stay, and it's a benefit to the country, and which refugees need protection, so to give them protection, and which migrants come here in an irregular way and should not stay because they are not abiding by the rules. So this is the mix of responses that every government has to have, and this is what is called migration management. One has to manage the situation. There is no solution to migration, because migration is a very natural process and will be always with us.
So what you are alluding to is that migration will continue, refugees will keep coming in. So when some leaders talk about stopping that, that's not going to happen.
Throughout history, it has not happened, so I don't know why it would happen now. And because people seek shelter, people want to survive, people seek opportunities. And societies have been developed through interchange of other cultures. So putting a stop to a development is, I think it's an illusion, and we have to be very honest about it. Therefore, each government, and this is, I think that's why we have by now, as IOM, 175 member states. These member states have agreed that migration needs to be managed in a realistic way. It is not about stopping it, it is about managing it to the benefit of the societies and of the individuals.
Thank you very much, Ms. Arena. So one thing that is becoming increasingly clear is that the problem of migration is not going to end. It will continue on, and what we as the international community lack at this point is a lack of sense of responsibility. For example, there are certain countries which are bearing the brunt of migration by hosting the largest population of migrants and refugees in the world, while there are others who have basically said outrightly a big no, a resounding no, that we're not going to take anyone. Mr. Spindelegger, how do we encourage equal responsibility among countries which are key stakeholders in all of this problem?
So from my point of view, I think we have to look forward to use, as you said, the opportunities. So what are the new opportunities? New opportunities are, for the first time in Europe, as an aging society, you can see there is a need for people coming just to fill in their workplaces in economy. So you have to use this opportunity, because people that are in the process of working are much more better integrated than others, of course. If you come as a refugee asking for asylum, it takes a long time that you are integrated. If you have a workplace, you are integrated every day, dealing with your job, with your colleagues, with all the environment that makes it possible to integrate you. So I think we have to use this opportunity, as it is now up, just to find legal pathways in the future with agreements. And I think this is very promising, as we can see from our 20 member states, that they are much more willing to have migration partnerships in future, to negotiate, to see what are the benefits, bringing people in legal pathways to your country, having a workplace, and then of course to be integrated much more than before. And of course the source countries could also agree to that, because many of them are searching for remittances from people going abroad, and this is much more possible if you have a good workplace. If you earn money, then you can send back much more money than if you're just a refugee and just asking for asylum in a country. So I think this is the promising moment that we have to use, and I think this new development has to be tackled. I see that many member states are now going on a bilateral way to negotiate and to find solutions, migration partnerships that really can change the situation.
Okay. Now, Mr. Cabal, as we discussed earlier, that politics is a big factor when it comes to this whole problem of migration. And one thing that is also becoming increasingly clear is that public opinion matters. And perhaps one reason why political leaders are not willing to act on integrating migrants into the society is because the public opinion in XYZ country, that particular country, is against migrants. So in your view, how do you think the public opinion can be shifted in the sense that migrants feel integrated in the society, migrants feel, refugees feel part of the society?
So many ways. Start by educating the public. Unfortunately, we don't see that happening, especially in Europe, when we see that some of the political campaign are basing their rhetoric on anti-migrant or anti-migration policies. As said before me, explaining also the public opinion the benefits that those migrants could bring. I mean, I don't think Germany suffered economically because they received migrants in the last 10 years. On the contrary, the German economy has benefited from the number of migrants they received either from Eastern Europe or even from Syria. But I would argue also that although migration is a natural phenomenon as mentioned, there is so many ways to deal with the root causes of migration. I mean, we could see in today's world, digitalization has opened ways for outsourcing instead of people moving physically to where jobs exist and market exists. The jobs could migrate in terms of outsourcing with digitalization especially. We see today lots of outsourcing of many jobs that are needed in developed economy and are performed in less developed economy. And this is very true within our Euro-Mediterranean region when we see that this economy is worth $180 billion, but in some estimate by the IMF could reach $800 billion in the next 20 years if the right policy are applied. Mentioned, and I also repeat what was said, intelligent migration, what we call circular migration. We see many countries, the case of Italy and Egypt, the case of Morocco and Spain, where some gaps in the local job market are filled temporarily by workers coming from the south for a very specific period of time and coming back. In a much larger scale, on a macroeconomic scale, integrate onshoring. I mean, the pandemic and the war in Ukraine has proved that we need to, a certain extent, bring production closer to home. So some of our imports in terms of many things should be more regionalized instead of depending on a global value chain. I'm not saying it's the end of globalization, but we need a mix of both. Coming to climate change and migration and energy. Renewable energy is one huge opportunity to create jobs in the south based on producing energy from wind, from sun, green hydrogen, exporting it to the west, and this will unleash enormous opportunity for economic growth. So at the same time, absorbing migrant, opening the job market for them, but also creating the condition in the south for the economy to grow at a pace that will, in a sense, reduce the flow of migration.
Now, certainly all of this can happen if countries with higher GDPs, a stable economy, are willing to play an active role in resolving this problem. Minister, how do you think countries with high GDPs, with a stable economy can do that? And do you believe there is enough will among those countries at this point to solve the problem?
Well, that's a big question. Well, I like some terms that have been used here, like intelligent migration and political willingness. It is difficult, but we have to understand that is behind this migration movement we're seeing is there is a demographic factor there. So there's a deficit of population on certain jobs in the destination point, so we have to work with them, finding ways for them to receive this population willing to move that way. But there's always a political cause for receiving migration, but we insist that for only one way is to accelerate the formalization of people, integration of people in these countries, and we have to take that people out of the criminal network that are moving them. So the state had to take advantage of the people willing to move and take in their hands with programs, with politics, with agreements with the destination countries to produce an orderly migration and promote the integration of those populations in the place of destination. It's a way of work, but we do understand that it's not easy. There are always internal political pressures against this movement, but we need to work that out.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Mazou, there's this principle: no one is safe until everyone is safe. And I think that applies to the problem that we are discussing in this particular panel. How do you think international cooperation can be enhanced in such a way that we just don't address the problem of migration itself, but also address its root cause of forced displacement?
No, you're right. I think the key principle is one of solidarity, and we are seeing that very often around the world. What is needed in solidarity is solidarity because anybody can find himself or herself in a situation where you have to leave your home, flee your country. So that principle, I think, needs to be underlined, and you need to have a system that ensures that that solidarity can be exercised and can be expressed. When it comes to refugees, there is an international framework, there's a legal framework that clearly indicates that if somebody has to flee because of reasons of persecution, conflict, etc., that person needs to be received and needs to be provided with asylum, given an opportunity to present one's case and given asylum. So I think it's important that these mechanisms are in place. Irena made reference earlier to migration and different legal framework being used, but I think it is important to underline that from the beginning. And if we have this kind of systems in place, then, as you said, everybody can be safe in the world in which we are operating.
Okay, Ms. Irena, let me come to you then. How can we build a global community that is truly inclusive and resilient in the face of challenges faced by migration?
To create realistic legal frameworks. We have a legal framework for refugees, and we need to create more transparent and also flexible legal pathways for migrants and people who seek opportunities and people who are interested and willing to enter new societies. So for this, each country has to have a legal framework for immigration that is actually responding to, first of all, the geographic situation of the country, but also their needs. And as we were saying, there are countries that have a demographic decline, but a strong economy, where there is an interest to have more people to come in. So one has to create legal pathways so that people can actually genuinely come and be respected of what they are. So, but also countries that have a high level of emigration, that means people are leaving, they also need to have a legal framework for that. But these situations can change any time, and we have seen it in history. Some countries were immigration countries, and within a few years they are emigration countries. So it's the flexibility of the system, but creating realistic legal pathways, both ways, for immigration and emigration. And I have been a refugee myself. I know how integration works. And people who flee a country and who are being hosted in a country, they are grateful for that. And they have a very strong incentive to integrate if there is a legal framework for integration, which is realistic. Migrants, labor migrants, or permanent immigrants, they have also a wish to integrate. They just need to have the legal framework and the openness of society. And as was mentioned before, it's about educating the society about what opportunities are there and what are no opportunities. So this is a discourse between governments, and there are many global migration fora that are dealing with this. So there are many opportunities for government to learn from others, but also to shape their systems. But vilifying migrants or refugees is definitely not the way to actually address the situation and make a better society.
Right, very well said. Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to our esteemed audience. If anyone has a question, please raise your hand. Yes, please, go ahead. Yeah, just come closer. I don't know if you have a microphone. Okay, we do. Yeah, the gentleman there is going to give it to you. Please say your name and the question, and who would you like to answer that question?
Hello, and I would like to thank the giving essay to me. My first question is a general question, actually. I am also coming from Ankara. My name is Dilara. My question is, you were mentioning about the equal responsibility for solving immigration problem. But which one is needed? Equal responsibility or partial responsibility according to the size and capacity of countries? I mean, some countries are more responsible because of this immigration. Which one is necessary or which one is needed for sustainable immigration? Equal responsibility or partial responsibility?
Okay. All right, thank you very much. And who would you like to answer that question?
Anyone.
Anyone? Okay, so Mr. Spindelaker, I'll throw that to you.
Very kind of you, thank you. But anyhow, I think the question you are raising, different responsibilities. I think what we can see out of practice, always neighboring countries are very much responsible for their neighborhood because refugees are running there just to have a safe country. So what we see in Turkey, hosting more than 4 million refugees is something that is really remarkable, and I think we all can be very grateful that Turkey is hosting them and dealing with them in the right way. Of course, what you have to see in a general way is what kind of capacities countries have. You see, for instance, Lebanon, to name this country, is having so many refugees, Syrian refugees, and they are struggling with that. They are in real troubles at the moment. And I think here we should also look to a solidarity mechanism that more countries are taking burdens and taking refugees if a country is suffering out of resources.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have another question there. Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you. Deniz Sert from Istanbul. I'm an academic. My question is to the minister. I was wondering, Colombia, given the fact that it is a signatory of the Global Compact on migration and refugees, but especially focusing on the one on refugees, is Colombia doing anything to actually utilize the compact in terms of, for example, getting more trade incentives as a as a country that is a host of a large group of migrants and refugees?
Okay, thank you very much. Minister?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, as a matter of fact, we're doing a lot for receiving these people, and we are very committed to the Global Compact on migration. Yeah, we're receiving a large influx of people, refugees, and asking for asylum, receiving them and trying to integrate this fully into our society.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Anyone? Okay, please.
Thank you very much for these valuable ideas and thoughts. My name is Evren Dadenen, and I'm the newly appointed personal representative of the chairmanship of OSCE for combating discrimination and intolerance against Muslims. So yesterday at our panel, actually, rising racism, xenophobia, and Islamophobia, we addressed or talked about migratory pressures that are among the causes that fuel polarization and xenophobia and anti-Muslim hatred. So while not specifically falling under your remit, I understand, I would like to hear your views, your experiences about how you see migratory pressures contributing to such tendencies, especially as they are rising right now, and where you would see, if you had to highlight one or two policy areas, frameworks, for addressing this side of the migration question, actually for any one of you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kamal, would you like? Yeah.
Well, I have to agree with you. I mean, migration has been instrumentalized, as said, and the body politics has been using migration for electoral gains. And with that come, of course, Islamophobia in some cases, or other form of discrimination based on where you come from and which culture you're bringing with you into those recipient countries. So back again to educating, back again to explaining to the local population the economic benefits of those migrants if they are fully integrated into the economy of those countries. And also the responsibility of national governments and us as the multilateral world, because to be honest, at least in my region, most of the negotiating process, the Rabat process or the Khartoum process, which were intended as a dialogue between Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa on one hand, and Europe and the Arab world on the other hand, has not yielded real results. So the refusal of some of the political elite in Europe to address the question in an equitable, balanced manner, the tendency of right-wing populist political faction of using it for pure political gains is complicating the issue. The answer to that is very complex. It needs a whole of society approach. It needs the media, it needs education, it needs also the politician adopting a more responsible approach to the issue.
Thank you very much, and I'll take one last question from you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Sara Aydın. I'm a professor at the Istanbul Commercial University. So actually, I don't have a question, but I want to raise an attention about a topic that is a fact in front of us happening right in the middle of, in the Middle East countries, which is the Palestinians. So actually, you know, we are talking about migration. So if we're gonna talk about it, so there is none of you talked or mentioned about Palestinians. So we talk about, you know, migration.
Actually, to be fair to my panelists, I began my panel by talking about Gaza, if you paid attention to that. So I began by talking about Gaza, Syria, and Ukraine.
Perfect. That's my question. It's not a question, just raise an attention about this topic.
Appreciate your observation. Thanks a lot.
1.9 million Palestinians internally migrated. So that's a, you know, it's a big question and a very important fact standing in front of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And to be fair to all my panelists, I'm sure all of my panelists would be willing to talk about Gaza right now. And one thing that I would like to mention is that it's not just the displacement that's happening in Gaza, it's also the fact that hundreds of thousands of people are starving there. Many of them have resorted to eating weed because they cannot find food. But certainly that is a topic that is being discussed extensively as part of Antalya Diplomacy Forum. And to end this discussion, one thing that I would like to say is that certainly migration is a big problem that the world is facing. right now. And the media has also a crucial role to play here. Just to pick up on the question that you asked about Islamophobia and how some migrants are being treated. I remember when the war in Ukraine erupted, the response from certain countries in the West was totally in favor of migrants, but when you see their response when the wars in Syria and Yemen erupted, it was completely different. And that also applies to how media organizations report on these events, and that's just my observation as a journalist. But certainly, I think while the issue of migration has its challenges, I believe in this discussion we were able to highlight and identify the opportunities that also lie within this subject. So I believe we end this discussion on a positive note. Once again, I would like to thank all my panelists for your fascinating insights into this topic, and of course to the audience for your questions and for listening to our panel. Thank you very much.